Welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, where we talk about fitness, health, and anything to help you become the most optimal human beings. Let's dive into it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
What's going on, man?
Not a lot. How's training going for you?
Not great.
Why not great?
Fighting off a head cold from last week, and then drill weekend, and just fatigue with a terrible sleeping baby. So my workouts the last couple of days, the last like five days or about a week, have been subpar.
In like that zombie mode.
Yeah.
Just try to get it done.
Yeah, but at least next week, starting Saturday, we're starting to actually get like really good weather, like actually kind of warm and sunny. So I think that'll help kick me into gear, because I just don't like starting anything when it's chilly out. But it's still chilly here.
What's chilly?
High 50s
Yeah.
and breezy.
I feel like that's the perfect weather though.
No. I need 60s with some. I really need sunshine. Like, I absolutely need sunshine.
Yeah.
Gray just does not motivate me.
Yeah, I don't like overcast weather, but I feel like 50s in the garage typically, like if you're doing anything that's going to generate body heat, like that's a good temp.
Nah, I'd rather start warmer. I'm okay sweating extra or being hot, like
Yeah.
miserably hot later on in the workout, but I'd rather start warmer.
Dude, it's getting hot here.
I bet.
I was really pressed for time yesterday, and so I didn't get to do my regular garage gym training session. And I was like, oh crap, I can either train tonight or I can just do something at my son's practice. So I took him to tennis practice, and it's at a high school. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna go run at the track of the high school while he does that. But I also didn't want to just like leisurely run. I don't get to go to a track very often. Most of the running's done like around here, or I just do stuff in my garage. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do like 400 repeats.
Yep.
And so that's what I did. But the weather just flipped like Saturday, honestly. So Saturday, which was like 3 or 4 days ago, as of the time of recording this, and it was stupid hot yesterday. I mean, for me, because I'm not quite acclimated, even though I live in Texas, we just haven't been there. So I think it was like 92 degrees with really high humidity and sunny, like right around like hottest point of the day. So like 3:30, 4 o'clock, something like that. And that was pretty miserable. I was like,
Yeah.
I was getting really, my first two, as with 400s typically go, like my first two were fine. I was like, yeah, those are good. But those next, I think I ended up doing 6 total. And then I did kind of longer rest intervals. Brutal. I mean, I could make it at about the 200-meter mark. I was gassed. I was just hot. And then I look at my Garmin after I'm done, because this new feature I haven't really used, but it's like,
Asks you how you feel and stuff.
well, it tells you how acclimated you are to the heat. Because it'll do this, it'll tell you heat acclimation. It'll also tell you like elevation acclimation. Like if you go up to elevation, like if your markers are getting within range. I don't even know what they're tracking, but the heat acclimation, they're like, as of Saturday, you were 5% acclimated. Now you're 30% acclimated. I was like, well, I still have a long way to go. So I'm curious if it actually works though. I'm gonna try it out and see. I gotta, once it gets to 100, once it says like you are acclimated to the heat, I want to see if I start feeling better. 400s feel a little bit easier, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it'd be cool for tracking wise, because you can look back at the date of like the percentage and then what your splits were, or your heart rate.
Yeah, that was brutal. I've not done 400s in a while. It felt good though. I mean, it feels good just to kind of like go fast sometimes and empty the tank a little bit.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do some 400s. 400s or 800s. I can't decide, but I'm going to work them in.
Who would ever, that's not even a decision. Like, why would you ever want to do an 800?
Because the pacing is slower. And if
but it's
I want
not
to
really
get like,
supposed to be. It's not supposed to be that much slower. 800 is just supposed to like suck, like really suck.
I mean, 400s pretty much suck. 800s, yeah, they do suck. I don't know. There's longer rest. And pacing's a little bit slower, and also typically you're doing less. So like, where I might do 8 400s, I'm only doing 4 800s.
Yeah. So what are you doing when you do 800s, are you going for? So there's like your mile pace, like PR mile pace. Is that the kind of pace you're keeping, or are you trying to go faster? Like I don't know
I
what
don't
your
even know
mile
my
time is, but like if
I don't
say your
even know
mile
my current
time's
mile time,
seven
honestly.
to 7 minutes, like are you going for a 7 minute mile pace on 800s?
It's kind of dependent on the day. Like whatever I start off with, I try and set like a really good hard pace, and then I just try and keep that for the rest of the day. So it's subject on the day because especially because I haven't been doing that many intervals or that much speed work. Like I don't even know what, like I said, I don't even know what my mile time would be right now. It's more of like, okay, how much can I push it for this first and second one, and then can I keep this up for the rest of mine for 800s? Uh, I kind of know my 400s times, and that one I can pretty much keep up with. It's more of time to completion versus pacing, because especially with pacing on Garmin, like you can look at it and then you can keep the same pace, and then it might take a minute to catch up, and it might vary 10 seconds plus or minus as you're going, 10 or 20 seconds sometimes.
Dude,
But overall, I know kind of know my time.
Garmin's got it locked in. I feel like this is not just like a Garmin ad, and it's totally not. But I was using it yesterday, and most of the time when I'm using it in my garage, I don't need a Garmin. You know what I mean? Like if I'm
Yeah.
just training, lifting weights in my garage, whatever, it's so unnecessary to have a Garmin. But when you're doing running and like that kind of stuff, like it was showing me like my power output on one screen. If I wanted to look at that, it would show me my pace. It has the track run setting, so it'll know which lane you're in, and like it's pretty cool. I liked it a lot.
I am kind of interested in the power stuff because that's a new feature, and I'm not sure what to do with it or how to interpret it, because I've seen it with on my runs. I just don't know, like, oh, cool, my power went this way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get how you could use it. To me, it's no different than if you were to be using heart rate as a gauge. You could use power as a gauge, or you could use pace as a gauge, right? Like to me, it's like pick your poison.
Hmm.
Maybe power is slightly more accurate, but if I'm going uphill, it knows that, right? So I have greater power output. Not on a track, but if I'm just doing like another run, the
Hmm.
power output would be greater. So I guess if you were trying to maintain a certain power, you could adjust. But they even have settings for that would adjust your pacing based off of elevation that you're coming up on. So I guess that's where it could change, because if you're like, hey, I wanted to hold a 200 power output for this whole run, you would know when you're going uphill, you could back down your pace significantly because you're still going to be
Hmm.
putting out power. You know what I mean? That same
Yeah.
amount of power. So I feel like that might be, because if I was like, I want to do a 7 minute mile pace for this entire 5 mile run, doesn't really make any sense if I'm going uphill to try and maintain 7 minutes. We go sprint up the hill just to try and maintain that 7 minutes. So I think it helps with things like that. But if you're on a track, I like just to keep pacing. I ignore heart rate. I'm
Yeah.
not really into the power stuff yet, but pacing, like, okay, I need to keep this at a 5 minute mile pace, or like 440, or like whatever.
I'll have to
And that
look
would be
into it.
for shorter sprints.
My neighborhood's really hilly, especially like because I live on toward the top of the hill. So like at first, mostly there's like I start off going uphill, then I go all the way downhill, and then it's like a little ups and downs throughout the bottom, and then but on the end I have to come all the way back up, and so I'd be I might actually look at power next time.
My house is similar, maybe not as aggressive as yours, but the first
Yeah,
mile after you leave my neighborhood is just downhill, like
yeah.
straight up 1 mile. So I always feel like I'm just a champion for a full mile downhill. I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
And you come back, man. I'm out of shape.
Out of shape, and I need protein. So that's what we're talking about today. We'll go ahead and dive into it. Um, I wanted to do this one selfishly. This is a study really looking at animal protein versus plant protein in regards to supplementation. Because if you've listened to the podcast, you've probably heard me complain about having to be dairy free off and on. I've brought it back and all sorts of crap. But this isn't about me. But ultimately, I don't really I consume animal protein though. I'm not vegan, vegetarian, anything like that. I can't really consume whey protein. It's like too concentrated or something. I can drink some milk and like have cheese and stuff, but whey seems to be like too ultra concentrated dairy for my digestive system, so I can't have it. So I'm always trying to find the best vegan proteins and powders and all this crap, and I kind of hate it because I wish I wasn't even having to go down that road. But I've been looking at this stuff for a long time, ever since I made the switch, which was probably back in 2018. But all my other protein sources are, I don't have to worry about. Generally, it's animal protein chicken or beef or like whatever. So yeah, I was very interested in this study. The title of the study, it was done in 2022. It's the muscle protein synthetic response to the ingestion of a plant-derived protein blend does not differ from an equivalent amount of milk protein in healthy young males. And they just gave the whole thing away, right? Just right off the bat. So this was a pretty cool study, randomized, double-blind, parallel group design, 24 young males aged 24 plus or minus 4 years. So the big why are they doing it? Obviously, they're wanting to see if plant-derived protein is as effective as animal-based protein, specifically milk-based protein. But they really wanted to see. They were looking at the amino acids because they had looked at previous research, and this is something that I've been talking about since 2018 when I had to make the switch. Was you need to be looking at leucine, lysine, and methionine. I typically only look at leucine, but that's basically why they did the study, because they were saying, hey, we want to see which one's more effective, but also we want to put a little more emphasis on the amino acid profile, because you can get a vegan or vegetarian protein. You can also get a non-vegan or vegetarian protein like a beef protein isolate that has next to no leucine. It just doesn't have the right amino acid profile, so it's just not as effective. So that's kind of what they were looking at, in my view. It's like not just was it plant-based, but it's like, if it's plant-based and hits the right amino acid profile, what are we looking at? And so how they did this was, I found this pretty interesting. I ended up looking into this more than I should have, because they did a primed continuous phenylalanine infusion. So what they do, I didn't really know what that was, but they put this amino acid in your blood, and it's like a continuous drip. And then they'd have them ingest protein, and then they would do blood samples. They also did muscle biopsies, and basically they're kind of tracking the tracer amino acid that they had put in a continuous drip, and then they're seeing like where it goes and with what other protein sources. And so they're kind of finding out like, hey, what ended up in your muscle? And that's what they're looking at. So the two things that they were looking at were blood concentration of amino acids, and also they were looking at muscle biopsies, and to see what the muscle protein synthesis rate was. That's how they measured muscle protein synthesis, was giving them this amino acid infusion and all this stuff. So anyway, they had 30 grams of milk protein or a 30-gram plant-derived protein blend combining 15 grams of wheat protein, which has become really popular lately, 7.5 grams of corn protein, and 7.5 grams of pea protein. So it's a mixture of those three different types of protein called the plant blend. And like I said, they did blood and muscle biopsies. They were collected frequently for 5 hours to assess plasma amino acid profiles, which was their secondary outcome, and subsequent muscle protein synthesis rate, which was their primary outcome. Ultimately, they did find milk increased plasma essential amino acid concentrations more than plant blend, so their secondary outcome, just like what was the amino acids present in the blood panels that they took, and milk had more in the blood. But when it got down to the actual muscle protein synthesis rates, there was no significant difference between the two different proteins. So that's most of the study. Like, what did you think of it?
I remain. I mean, I don't want to say unconvinced, but I'll start with I'll compliment sandwich it. I wasn't. I was pretty surprised at the corn protein, and then the fact that, I mean, I haven't really seen corn protein in many things, but the fact that it's high in leucine, that was pretty interesting to me. And I don't know if that was we talked about the last podcast, your carb supplement that you're doing, that now has protein with it. They have some sort of corn blend, and I think that's interesting, which is probably how that gets leucine as well. But I wouldn't expect corn protein to have pretty high in leucine. However, the structure of the study was kind of weird. The tracer amino acid was kind of cool to see how it goes and where it goes, but it's very short. and they didn't have them do any sort of fitness leading up to it, during, after. It was just two, from what I understand, it was just two groups that consumed two different proteins, and then they just saw where it went, and then their conclusion was that plant protein, and it's very vague. Like when they first worded it, it's very vague on how that plant protein can be as good as whey, but like there are so many different kinds of blends of plant proteins out there that you still need to like really investigate what plant protein you're taking, because there's a bunch with pea, there's a bunch with soy, there's with certain seed proteins out there. There's like I've seen a bunch with like certain pumpkin seeds and whatnot. There's, I guess, corn. So like
Bean, yeah.
yeah. So like all of these different plant proteins are out there, and some of them you can't just be like, oh cool, I just saw this study and it says plant proteins are just as good as whey, I'm going to try this out. But you need to really like still investigate further and not take this study for what it says on the surface. And but I mean, it was, I guess it's still kind of cool to see that from an amino acid, as long as you have the right, basically the takeaway is as long as you have the proper amino acid profile, then you're good. But you just need to really make sure and to investigate that the amino acid profile is good.
Yeah. And I think that that is the most important part. And yeah, they had a very clickbaity title. Again, the title was "The Muscle Protein Synthetic Response to the Ingestion of a Plant-Derived Protein Blend Does Not Differ from the Equivalent Amount of Milk Protein in Healthy Young Males." And yeah, that's true. That's what they tested. Um, I don't know if it's necessary that they had to do anything else or the study be any longer because of what the study was testing. And we've kind of talked about this before. Like this is more like if I need you to develop power in fitness, like I just need to make you a more powerful athlete. Then and I come into your garage and I'm like, hey, I need you to move the barbell at this speed. And I put on the tracker and like I look at it and I'm like, okay, you're moving the barbell at the speed I want. So this is the weight that we should be doing. You're moving the speed. I need you to be doing this frequently. I can now leave and I don't need to do anything else because I've controlled your barbell speed. So I'm really just looking at velocity, making sure you can hit velocity. I don't care what happens 12 weeks from now because I know what you're doing now is effective. Like you're moving the barbell fast enough, as opposed to the flip side of that of like doing a full program and then finding out how much faster you got by applying that velocity over 12 weeks. So that, to me, they're two different things, but they're going to lead to the same outcome. So I think that's why they didn't, because they're looking at like, was this going to the right place? Was it ending up in muscle tissue? Because there's a large argument in vegan, vegetarian proteins that you need some like 20-30% more than like an animal protein for it to be effective because of how much like waste is involved in the digestive process of ingesting plants. And those are studies as well. That's not like random stuff. Like there are studies, and this is all published. Even when you go through like personal training certifications, they let you know things like that, just in case you have a vegan or vegetarian athlete. They'll have to consume a little bit more. But that, to me, that's when you're actually eating the plant. When you're taking this like condensed source of protein that they've already gotten from these other sources, um, I feel like it's a little bit, you don't need to like put in 20% more protein to get it consumed. So I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I think ultimately you're right. You have to focus on the leucine content, and it does work both ways. So when I was finally like, okay, I'm going to be done with dairy based protein supplements, I didn't switch to a vegan or vegetarian supplement. I didn't want to. I switched to a beef protein isolate, which was Equip at the time. And the more research I did to find out like how effective proteins were, all of my research pointed me towards leucine specifically. And the rule of thumb here is you want about 2 grams of leucine per serving. Like whenever you're having your protein, like if you eat 3 times a day, you want to try and get 2 grams of leucine in that sitting to be able to have enough protein muscle synthesis to see the results you want in ingesting protein for muscle development, muscles like avoiding muscle sparing, like, or have muscle sparing, all those kind of things, avoiding muscle waste. So that's what you want, is that 2 grams of leucine. That's kind of what I landed on. And then I emailed the company that had the beef protein isolate, and I was like, hey, how much leucine do we have? And it was something like, okay, per 100 grams, we have like 1.7 grams of leucine. but 100 grams isn't even the serving size. It was like 30 grams was the serving size. So I needed to have like 3 servings in a day to even get to 1.7 grams of leucine, which arguably is probably enough. Like 2 grams is like a great margin of error. It's like probably more than you realistically need. But like I'd say 1.7 to 2.2 grams, something like that. So that's when I was like, well, crap, where can I get more leucine? And the more research I found pointed me directly towards pea protein specifically. Like pea protein has the most leucine in it, like over anything else. And I've tried a lot of these other different protein sources in this vegan vegetarian world, but I'm pretty much okay at this point if it's a pea protein supplement because I know pea protein has a lot of leucine. But I still email these companies and ask if they don't have it like clearly stated on the website, like, hey, what what's the amino acid profile? They're typically going to email it to you, and they have it like ready to go because they email it out all the time. But just something to be, and if they don't give it to you or they won't send it to you, don't work with that company. Don't buy their products anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's ultimately what you want to work with, and it goes, like I said, both ways. A lot of people listening to this, they could care less because they're like, I don't care. I take whey. I'm good with whey. And I think that's another big takeaway for me is
Take
whey
away.
sits at the top. Like whey is the king. You know what I mean? Like I'm not arguing that. I just can't have it. And so now I'm trying to find the best alternative. To me, there's no argument. Like even if I looked at this study and I was like, okay, plants just as good as whey. If I could have whey, I would still just have whey because I know that it's just the most digestible. And to be honest, it outperformed the plant in the secondary outcome, which was the blood acid amino profile, which might matter, like what you're saying, in a longer duration study, like that might become important. So if you can just take whey, or what's above all of the supplementation, eat your protein. Eat eat chicken after after your workout, or beef or fish or whatever you can, and that's ultimately going to be the best source of protein that you can have.
So this study, did it change your thoughts, views, or anything on the pea proteins of like doses? Because you mentioned the having to have more before, but did it change your thoughts on anything,
On like the types
or
of
just
plant protein.
how you'll supplement your because you do pea protein?
Yeah, no, I'm good with just sticking with pea protein because I've seen how much leucine is in pea protein. I have seen wheat protein becoming a bigger and bigger thing. Like I feel like 3 years ago, it wasn't even a thing. Like maybe you could find it on some like fringe supplement company like website, and now wheat protein is gaining a lot of traction because it is effective and it has a decent amino acid profile. Um, but I just haven't looked into it enough. My thought is like, and this is coming from an uneducated standpoint because I haven't looked into it. But wheat protein to me is gluten. Um, right? Like I mean, that's what gluten is. It's a wheat. It's protein
Hmm.
found in gluten. So is this like the most concentrated form of gluten that you can get that we're ingesting, and we're kind of still like we don't know about gluten. You know what I mean? Like I'm not scared of gluten. My wife has to be gluten free for medical reasons, but I just don't know if it is pure gluten, and I could be wrong on that. Like I said, I have not looked at it at all. I'm just kind of like, A plus B equals C here. But I haven't fully looked into it. I don't know if I'd want to consume wheat protein. Um, and corn, I didn't even know corn was to be honest, until this study, I'd never heard of corn protein being a thing. Like the supplement I'm taking, the carbohydrate comes from corn, but the protein is coming from pea. It's a mixture of a cornstarch and a pea protein. So yeah, it makes me want to look into wheat and corn a little bit more, but I don't know if I'd switch to either one of those as like my primary supplement.
Now, have you? And it seems like an untapped market, but have you tried much with like egg white protein? Because we did learn that eggs have a ton of leucine, and one of the egg white proteins that I looked up has a lot of leucine as well.
I
But
mean,
most of them come
eggs are the
unflavored.
best. I mean, I say if you look at protein has like digestibility scores, and then there's like usability scores. I say whey is the best, but actually, I think everything is in comparison to the egg. like egg is the true gold standard, and I don't mean that in a supplementation standpoint. I just mean like in consumption standpoint. Like there's always a little bit of waste in the digestive process when you consume stuff, and so like beef has a really high digestibility and usability index, but egg, just like your body uses everything. Like it's just the best. So the only reason I haven't taken egg white protein, because I have looked into it, is I am afraid of developing an egg allergy, because I know that's kind of like a crazy, crazy cautionary thing. But long story short, with dairy, I consumed the hell out of dairy for like 15 years. And I mean like a lot of dairy, maybe a gallon a day at sometimes of milk, like just crushing it, have whey protein too. Like I consumed so much dairy. It was my primary protein source. 15 years later, my body hates dairy. Right. And so this is all like, just again, like we were talking about nutrition last week, kind of being individualized. I think that that's really odd. It's like I ate myself into an allergy or something, and I can't like
Mm-hmm.
recover from it. And so I don't want that to happen with eggs. I really enjoy eating eggs. I have probably about 3 eggs per day. That's generally my breakfast almost every single day. So I don't want to also start taking an egg white protein and then find out in a couple years, oh, guess what? You can't have milk or eggs ever again. Like I don't want that to ever be the case. So that's the only reason I haven't. And it's really just for my own, like my own logic. I'm like, if I consume too much of this, will it be a problem? Because a lot of people do have an allergy to eggs, which can be developed, or you could be born with it. So that's why I've stayed away from egg white protein.
Yeah, and I mean it's not really hard too, because almost every egg white protein I see is unflavored anyway. So you pretty much only be able to use it in a smoothie, not just like a normal protein shake. We've the only time we have egg white protein here, but we just use it in baking just to up the protein content of anything we might be baking, like protein waffles. That's about it.
Yeah, and I mean, eggs are such a great source of protein, and it's generally easy to eat your eggs most of the time without having
More
to.
enjoyable.
Yeah, a lot more enjoyable. Um, but yeah, that's my take on that. Do you have anything else?
Not really. I do weigh. We are 100% uh switched to, or pretty much 100% switched to Earth Fed Muscle. This is the company that we do, which not a sponsor, but they have delicious, and what would they it's all grass fed whey, and their leucine's good. So other than that, like sometimes we'll get on it. It's just honestly a little more expensive.
Yeah, Onnit had a pretty solid vegan supplement for a while, but I don't know if they stopped making it, or I don't know. And that's another thing that I look into with these mixtures, these blends. Like, just go ask the company if you are taking a vegan or vegetarian supplement. Like, just go ask what's your amino acid profile. Look at it, see if it all makes sense. But then when we're mixing like 5 or 6 different plants to try and get it, that's where I become a little bit less interested in it. I think I'd rather just take like a more pure source. Like the one I'm taking now is all pea protein, is where the protein is derived from. But that's just a personal preference. So takeaway for the garage gym athlete: eat your protein if you can. I mean, 80% of your protein should be eaten in the form of animal protein if you are cool with that. If not, eat a lot of plants. You will have to eat more. Then going down into supplementation, whey is going to be the best protein supplement that you could take, hands down. Whey protein isolate most of the time. You can try some of these other blends, but that's typically the best. And then you can look into plant proteins from there. Just make sure you're not going to even have to check with whey protein. Like, you don't have to email your supplement company and be like, hey, does my whey have 2 grams of leucine? Like, no, it has an off the charts amount of leucine in it. Like, you don't have to worry about it. It probably has like 4 grams. So you don't have to worry about it. It's hitting that 2 threshold that's hard in plant-based stuff. So yeah, then just looking at pea protein specifically, or just finding, if you are getting a blend, look into a blend that has at least 2 grams of leucine, and you'll be good to go. You'll hit the muscle protein synthesis that you're looking for, and you won't have any problems gaining muscle when you're not on animal protein.
Yep. Sounds
Cool.
good.
That's it. Well, that's it for this one. We will get out of here If you are not a part of Garage Gym Athlete, head over to garagegymathlete.com, start a free trial. We would love to have you in the community. For everybody who's a part of the community, thanks for being here, sticking around, doing the training. We really do appreciate it. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.